What's up, everybody? Coach Mills here, coming at you with a brand new Valorant video. And in this video, we gotta break down the new agent tier list because we have a lot of data to break down and go through. We know exactly what characters are dominating right now and what characters are really struggling. So we gotta break it down and talk about it. We are excited to introduce you to our brand new sponsorship, Outplayed. Now, Outplayed is the ultimate video capturing app for gamers, and you're gonna be able to automatically capture your best moments and biggest plays, and even anything else with just the press of a button. Whether it's an ace, a sick goal, or maybe you completely whiffed and you wanna share it with your friends, Outplayed makes sure you never miss an interesting moment, and then you can share it very easily with Discord, YouTube, or anywhere else. On top of that, there's a built-in video editor, so you can edit your videos from within the app, meaning you can record and output a ton of content, sending it to your friends, building up your channel, or anything else. Outplayed supports over 300 games, so what are you waiting for? Go check it out right now in the download links below. Now, we have a ton of data from champions showcasing a lot of the agents that are really strong right now and many of the agents that don't see a lot of play. However, it is important to make the distinction that pro play does not always emulate ranked play, and there are many characters that saw almost no pro play that are very powerful and ranked under the right circumstance. So, while this tier list is gonna rank people based on their pro or top tier pick rate, I'm gonna leave a ton of caveats within the list telling you when and where you can play the characters even if they don't see a lot of pro play. Starting off at the bottom of the list, we're not gonna put these characters in F tier, but we'll put them in D tier based on pro pick rate. And there are 4 characters that had just about 5% pick rate or less, period. And it's Reyna, Yoru, Cypher, and Phoenix. And these characters had some of the lowest pick rate in pro play, but 3 of these characters are actually incredibly powerful in ranked play under the right circumstance. First off, let's talk about Reyna. Everyone knows that this character has a ton of carry potential. If you are the best player in the lobby, Reyna is an S tier character for you. However, she doesn't do that much for her team. She's not very good at doing any sort of coordinated set plays. And while I do think that if you're very mechanically good and you're independent as a player, then Reyna can be a good way to climb to an extent, but I do think it caps your development as a player. So I'm not sure I could suggest her in good conscience, even if she is a potentially very powerful character in ranked. Next up, a character that is all the way down in pick rate in pro play, Yoru. Riot themselves have come out and said that this character is incredibly powerful as players master it. Yoru has a very exponential curve of impact, meaning that as players get better and better, their win rates exponentially increase, and players that are in Radiant and High Immortal that are really good at Yoru have crazy win rates. And that means that this character is very difficult to climb with, is very difficult to learn, and probably has a lower than average win rate across most ranks. But as players get very good at this character, all of a sudden his impact is really, really high. Now, you might be asking, okay, I'm in gold or I'm in plat, should I play Yoru? Well, while sure, on average, your win rate might not be the best on the character, there is potential to unlock if you grind and learn the character, which I think is what is more important than just your initial win rate. So for ranked, I would actually give Yoru something like an A tier, and a character that is definitely worth grinding and putting the hours in to becoming a specialist at. Next up, we're gonna talk about Phoenix, where, yeah, Phoenix only saw about a 6% pick rate, only 10 games in 172 at Champions. He did see play at the finals. Optic played him a lot to great success. It was actually phenomenal watching Victor pop off on Phoenix. And I do think that it's more important to take into the good teams and what they're playing into account. That's the first thing. And second thing is, Riot themselves said Phoenix has a top 3% pick rate even at the higher ranks of play, which means that Phoenix is a fantastic character to climb with. For ranked, he would probably be A or S tier. Even if he's not played that much in pro play, I do think that this is one of the best characters to climb with, and he is incredibly strong, so don't underestimate Phoenix as a character, and he's no longer a troll pick for ranked play specifically, even if he isn't shining amazingly right now in pro play, at least to the extent of some of the other duelists. Now, I do want to talk about the other character in D tier, Cypher, that saw very little pro play, but Cypher is also a character that isn't fantastic in ranked play either. He's slated for buffs on the radar of Riot, and in general, Cypher can get some value on some maps. You could play him on maps like Pearl, hypothetically. You could even play him on maps like Breeze if you have some teamwork and cohesion with someone that is playing with you in a duo queue. But in general, this character is pretty underpowered right now. And unlike the other three that I mentioned, his rank and pro pick rate are very similar. And the tier he's in both is also very similar. Next up, let's talk about the D tier. These are characters that are about 25% pick rate all the way down to about 15% pick rate in pro play. Characters that are legitimately powerful, but there's specific uses for these characters and some maps that they're favored in and compositions that they're favored in. So at the bottom of the list, we have Neon. Neon was picked 15.7% at Champions. This is a character that really thrives on some maps, mainly Fracture, and on the majority of maps doesn't see that much play. The big problem with Neon is that she's far better when you have someone to set her up, especially in coordinated play. Like, you need to play her with a Breach, and Breach isn't good on every map, and most of the time you want a Breach or some other Flash character to set her up. Now, that being said, for ranked play, Neon occupies a similar space to someone like Yoru, for instance, and even Reyna, where if you're better than a lot of people in the lobby, you can really mess up players' timing. This goes double in ranked when players don't properly understand the timing breaks that Neon can have, where you're in an angle where enemies don't think you could be there yet, or you're pushed up in an area that enemies don't think you could occupy, and you will often catch enemies, you know, whipping out their abilities or in the middle of looking somewhere else and just completely catch them by surprise. On top of that, Neon's really good at getting value out of a lot of these cheaper weapons. And I do want to point out that there's one weapon in particular, the Stinger, that just got buffed, and I'm gonna have a completely different weapon meta video coming soon, talking about some of the big changes that are happening. The Stinger is insane, and Neon is one of the best characters to abuse this weapon. So I do think that even though she's all the way in C tier for pro play, in ranked play, she is much higher. And with the new Stinger meta, the Force Buy meta that is upcoming in ranked play, Neon is in a prime position to abuse that more than any other character on this list. Now, we will kind of jump through some of these other characters. Killjoy, Brimstone, Skye, Sage, all these characters see a decent amount of play. And for the most part, these characters are really strong. Like, they're not in C tier because there's anything wrong with these characters at all. They're all very powerful. It's just that there's competition on a lot of maps for their pick rate. They are not going to be omnipresent, and that means that they can't be, you know, an S tier meta character if you don't see them all the time, because Brimstone has maps that he's really favored on. For instance, he is the go-to controller for a map like Bind, and even a map like Fracture he's very good on, but the vast majority of the other maps he sees very little play on, and he's not optimal to play on. Doesn't mean you can't play him on those maps in ranked, especially because Riot has said that Brimstone has some of the highest win rates in the game in ranked. But for the most part, the optimal maps to play him on mean that he only sees legitimate play on 2, maybe 3 maps. Also, Killjoy is another Sentinel that is kind of being held down by the ultimate power that is Chamber, but really there are maps that she could see play on, like Ascent, where she is most optimal. She doesn't even see the most amount of play there, only about a 50% pick rate on her best map. So in that regard, you could say, hey, she needs buffs in some way if she wants to compete, or the other Sentinels need nerfs. But for now, she's occupying, you know, this C tier space where there are places where you can use her. But a little bit unlike Brimstone, where Brimstone has a few maps where he has a very high condensed pick rate, Killjoy is a little bit more spread out, which means that she is less decided on some of these maps as opposed to Brimstone that is more decided on fewer maps. Also, Skye is a character that is very strong. Everyone knows how powerful Skye can be, but she has a lot of competition. The initiator slot is completely stacked, and besides Bind, where she sees almost a 90% pick rate, for the most part, she is only seeing little bits of pick rate here or there. Doesn't mean she isn't a phenomenal character, and especially for ranked, if you're duoing and you have a duelist that you could set up with Skye flashes, or y'all could take space together, this is a really great combo. Now, last up, we do got to talk about Sage, where Sage sees the most amount of play on Icebox at a near 100% pick rate. But other than that, she just sees some fragmented pick rate here or there. And it's, of course, up to the personal preference of the team and the players themselves. Now, for ranked, Sage would be much higher, something like B, maybe even A tier. And the reasoning behind this is that Sage is a character that has a very high win rate in ranked. We've heard this from Riot themselves, and even though Sage is perceived to be one of the weaker characters in the game, according to win rate across the board, that doesn't actually reflect. So keep that in mind. If you're a grinder of Sage and you like to play Sage a lot, all power to you, because on average, your win rate is very high, and if you are an above average Sage, you're gonna be winning a lot of damn games. Now, the last two at the top of the C tier is Astra and Breach. I'm tempted to put Breach in the next tier, but based on pick rate, there are just a lot of really, really great characters that we gotta fill those spots with. Astra is a character that is actually gonna be a lot weaker than the tier list puts her in ranked. So for Pearl, she is like the optimal pick for a controller. She's seeing more play than any other controller on Pearl, even though there are some controllers that see a little bit of fragmented play here or there. Pearl's choke points gives Astra a really legitimate means to take space with her team, and I do think that that's one of the big things in affecting her pick rate. But remember, Astra as a character is a lot better with the synergy and cohesion of a team, and if she's only seeing about 20% pick rate in pro play, for ranked she's going to be a lot harder to pull off, and I couldn't really imagine wanting to play Astra and solo queue. I think that would be completely miserable. The plays that you could make feel a lot less than, you know, playing a controller like Omen, for instance. So I would keep that in mind, but on specifically Pearl, Astra is an absolute powerhouse. Now, of course, last up, we gotta talk about Breach, and Breach is a character that sees a lot of play on Haven and a ton of play on Fracture, but outside of that, it's kind of sporadic. Breach is a character that really shines under optimal conditions, whether it's a map or agents that can take advantage of the space he's taking and creating. I think that Breach is a character that when he's in the perfect situation, he is one of the best characters in the game. But there are a lot of times where you're in a solo queue lobby, you're playing Breach, you lock Breach, and you don't really feel like you're getting as much value as you could out of a ton of the other characters and even initiators in the game. So for these reasons, I do think that Breach is just barely into C tier, but he's towing the line, of course, into B tier. Now, next up, we do gotta talk about B tier. These are characters that are very, very strong, see play on multiple maps. You can play them in many different situations, and of course, they are very powerful in rank 2. We're gonna be putting 4 characters in the B tier. First off, we have Jett, then we have Sova, Raze, and Omen, all fluttering around 30 to 35% pick rate in pro play. First off, Jett is a character that is even better in ranked play than she is here. She's a really phenomenal character that has a lot of flexibility, whether it's potentially opping or being aggressive, of course. And her most optimal maps are maps like Breeze and Ascent. Surprisingly, she wasn't really picked all that much on Icebox, which is shocking to me because I do feel like she's a character that has notoriously thrived on Icebox in the past. But perhaps this really comes down to the fact that Sage saw a ton of Icebox play, and there are really limited spots when you have both a Sage and a Chamber, an Initiator, and a Controller all filling up all the spots on Icebox. Next off on the B tier, we have Sova. Sova's a character that has definitely lost a lot of pick rate to Fade, but there are still maps that he's most optimal on. Notably, Breeze, he still saw 100% pick rate on that map, where Fade saw none, and he shared a lot of pick rate with Fade on maps like Ascent and Icebox in double Initiator compositions. I do think that Sova is very strong in the right hands, and even though there are maps where Fade is more optimal, a really knowledgeable and skilled Sova can make up that difference with knowledge of the character and practical use of his abilities. So in general, Sova could be a character that, in my opinion, in ranked at least, could be played on nearly every map. Next up in the B tier, we do have Raze. Raze is a character that sees cracked out pick rate on maps like Bind, literally 100% at Champions, and sees about 50% pick rate on Haven. But for a lot of other maps, she sees pick here and there. And I also do agree that Raze is a character that is far better in ranked than Raze is in pro play. That being said, those are the most optimal situations for Raze. And in general, Raze is a really powerful character that does a very unique thing that a lot of characters can't replicate. While we look at the Initiator role and we see a ton of overlap, where characters like Breeze and Sky and KO overlap and Fade and Sova overlap, we look at Raze and we say, what the hell overlaps with this character? Nothing. She's very unique, she's very specific, and in a lot of situations, she's gonna get value where other characters would not be able to. Last up in the B tier, we have Omen. And Omen's a character that is winning the Dome Smoker race. He saw more preferred play across some maps, but remember, maps like Bind, for instance, and Breeze and Icebox, he's giving up a lot of that pick rate to, characters like Brim or Viper. Now, that being said, on maps that he sees play, like Haven, it was almost a 90% pick rate. On Ascent, it was a 60% pick rate. And he did see some small amounts of play on maps like Pearl and Fracture, even though most of the Pearl pick rate was actually picked up by Astra. Now, for ranked, I do think that Omen is the most impactful Dome Smoker. When you compare him directly to Brimstone and Astra, he individually can make more plays in ranked, and he's a lot easier to set up engagements with this character. He needs a lot less teamwork and cohesion, and while Brimstone's a character that can do his job very well, he's not as good at making these proactive plays that sometimes you need to clutch up, or maybe you want to. So while he is one of the most picked characters in pro play as a controller, he also is one of the best playmaking controllers in ranked as well. So that's another stock plus for him as a whole, just mastering this character. Now we're moving on to the A tier. There's only 2 characters in the A tier. As you see, this list is really bottom heavy because I do think that a lot of characters are interchangeable, but the characters towards the top of the list, like in A and S tier, are not very interchangeable. They are very necessary, and you will see them a lot. And in the A tier, the 2 characters we have is KO and Viper, both really pushing that pick rate to 40-45% average. Now, first off, let's talk about KO, which is a character that is just cracked out in pick rate on a ton of maps. Icebox 50%, Pearl 50%, Fracture 30%, Breeze 60%, Ascent almost 100%. Besides Bind and Haven, he sees play everywhere. Now, the very interesting thing that we learned about KO, though, is that in ranked play, he has some of the lowest win rates in the game, which is really, really crazy because he has some of the highest pick rates in pro play. And I think that that really comes down to the fact that many KOs don't use KO to set up their teammates. I know KO can be a very individualistic type of character, right? You flash yourself, you peek angles, you challenge. But if you're gonna do that, there are characters that could do that a little bit better if you're just an individual person. A character like Phoenix, for instance, you could flash yourself through a corner and challenge it yourself, and you have the tools to do so. But with KO, you really need to also integrate a lot of teamwork and cohesion into your kit and use him in a large part like Breach, right? Where you're flashing over the top of a wall. We saw that a ton of champions. You flash over the top of the wall, let your team actually challenge. Make sure that you are helping your teammates and being an initiator first and a duelist second, rather than being a duelist first and an initiator none, right? I think that if you're playing Kalo only as a duelist, he is subpar compared to the many duelists in the game. But if you play him as an initiator and then sometimes a duelist hybrid, then he gets the most value, which I think a lot of people in ranked are not doing. So in ranked play, he would probably be something like C tier, but for pro play, he is A tier, towards the top. Next up, we do gotta talk about Viper. Viper is a character that is just undisputed on the maps that she's good in. She's undisputed at Icebox, she's undisputed at Breeze, 100% pick rate on both maps, and you have to play this character on these maps. The other smokers just can't do what she does. But the interesting thing that happened is now she's seeing like a 90% pick rate on Bind as well. She's sometimes seeing play with other controllers, and in many cases, teams were playing a Brimstone Viper combo where they were playing them both, which is absolutely crazy, but it actually worked very well with a ton of setups that were very hard to push through and the ability to retake sites really easily. Viper is a phenomenal character, and until she sees some competition with the new character, the new controller coming out that is going to challenge her for some of her pick rate, she is a character that is a necessity on way too many maps, and for that reason, she's in the A tier. Now let's talk about the S tier, and these are characters that are basically undisputedly the most powerful characters in the game, and they're so strong that they are slated for nerfs sometime in the future. So you can either, master these characters and abuse them while you can, or think of legitimate ways to counter these characters because they will be in your games until they get nerfed in some meaningful way. First off, we do got to talk about Fade. Fade saw a 50% pick rate, saw 40% on Bind, 90% on Haven near about, 70 on Ascent, 30 on Icebox, Fracture saw 30, Pearl saw 90. The only map she didn't see pick on is Breeze, which makes sense because Sova is more preferred for the longer sight lines and his ability to actually push a dart to somewhere really far away. Fade, though, is just incredibly strong for pro play and ranked play. Her dog is ridiculous. She can punish anyone that is taking an aggressive space, clear out corners very easily, and I do think that Fade is one of the best characters to climb with. She is one of the most powerful characters in the game for both pro and ranked pick rate, and she's undoubtedly an S tier character, and she's only beat by one character, and that's Chamber, who saw a 66.8% pick rate, and he basically saw pick on every map. There's not a single map where he didn't see play on. His lowest pick rate was 34% on Bind, but for the most part, he saw near top percent pick rate. Pearl 88, Fracture 100, Breeze 68, Icebox 90, Haven 78. I mean, he's just seeing pick rate everywhere, and it's just because the nerfs were not enough to touch this character. There's not enough competition in the Sentinel slot, and he's so powerful that in many situations, he's actually taking the pick rate from duelists, and he's the go-to opper. He is the best way to hold large amounts of space, and Chamber's just a phenomenal character right now, and it's not changing until Sentinels either get buffed in a large way, or other characters get buffed across the board in a large way, or Chamber receives some more nerfs. So for now, if you're not abusing Chamber, then you need to be properly playing around him. Play around his operator. When does he have it? What rounds does he have it in? Properly use utility to get him off angles. Find information about where he is. Jump peek correctly. These are all things that you can do to prevent Chamber from getting free op value, free kill value. And ultimately, Chamber is our most powerful agent in the game. But let me know what you feel about this tier list down below. Which characters on this list do you think deserve to be higher? And what characters do you think deserve to be nerfed or buffed? I really want to hear your opinion about all that down below. Thank you so much for coming by, and I'll see you next time.